Hi you guys, my name is Cyan Martin and welcome to my YouTube channel. So today we are going to be talking about all of the books that I read in the month of June and July. I thought I would add these together because I did start my channel in the middle of June. So that's what we're doing today. We do have over 30 books, so hold tight because it's gonna be a long video. However, I feel like a lot of this can be repetitive if you've seen my other videos because a lot of these books I did read in those videos. So because of that, I'm going to try to kind of quickly run through all of these books. That way it's not too repetitive and we're not sitting here for a very long time. Also, before we get started, I just wanted to say that I read some of these books almost 2 months ago. So my synopses, the information I tell you guys about these books may not be 100% accurate because my memory can't remember stuff from yesterday, so how am I supposed to remember stuff from 2 months ago? So I'm gonna do my best, but if something is wrong or it's not a good synopsis, don't blame me. So yeah, let's get into it, starting with all the books that I read in the month of June. So the very first book that I read in June was Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Everyone and their mother has already read this book, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. This is about Violet, who is training to become a dragon rider, and in order to become one, she has to go through these trials that are very deadly. And while she is doing this, she is competing with other people, and one of those people happened to be her enemy, Xaden. Well, they're supposed to be enemies, but let's be real, they're not. So it is a fantasy romance. You've got the dragons in there. You also have enemies to lovers. And I gave this book 4 stars. I did really enjoy it. Some of my favorite things about it are that the dragons are so funny to me. I feel like the things that they say and the way that they act, because you do get their internal monologue, kind of reminds me of how dogs would think and act if we could read their minds. Does anyone else feel that way? Because I just do. They're sarcastic, they're grumpy, they're funny, but they are also very loyal, and I do love that. But the only reason why it is not a 5-star is because I felt like you really just jumped into this story. There wasn't a lot of world building, and it did get a little confusing for me at parts because there are like squad leaders, quadrant leaders, wing leaders, I think, stuff like that, and that just really confused me because it felt like I was listening to military rankings, and I don't know anything about that stuff. And also there were some parts in this book where I did get a little bit bored. It felt really slow, but overall I did have a good time reading it, and I really liked the ending of it and the trials that she went through. So that's why it is a 4-star for me. So the next 3 books that I read are actually part of a trilogy, and that is the Truly Devious trilogy by Maureen Johnson. So the first book is Truly Devious, and then I believe it goes The Vanishing Stair, and then The Hand on the Wall. These are all about a girl named Stevie, who she goes to this elite academy for different students with different talents. So you have artists and engineers, and then there's Stevie, who she's just really into true crime. So I guess that's the same as an engineer in some way. So yeah, that's why she's at this school, and it just so happens that decades before her arrival, there is actually a girl that was murdered at the school, and the owner's wife and daughter went missing, but it is a cold case. And the only clue that was left behind was a note signed Truly Devious, so Stevie decides that she's going to figure out what happened, and I can feel my eye twitching. And while she's in the process of trying to solve this decades-long murder, or old murder, other murders start occurring at the school, and she gets a letter herself from none other than Truly Devious. So that's what this series is mostly about. It is a YA thriller mystery series, and I personally ended up giving it 3 stars. I thought it was decent, but my biggest complaint is the fact that you do not figure out what happens until the very end of the last book. So all 3 of these books are following the same mysteries, and I just am not a fan of that. It felt really dragged on. I also did not love the love interest in this book because there is a little bit of a romance, and the whole time I kept picturing them as like 12-year-olds when I'm pretty sure they're teenagers. I don't know why, but that's just how I felt. So for me, it was just a 3-star series. This author also has 2 other books, I believe, about the same exact characters, except in each of those books, I believe they are different mysteries. So that might be a whole lot more interesting, especially if you've already read these. I may read those, I may not. Next up, we have the first book that I have ever DNF'd, because normally I force myself to get through books. I know it's a bad habit, but I'm starting to get better at it. And the first book I've ever DNF'd is Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert. This is about a girl that her father is a very powerful vampire king, and she is half vampire, half human. He sends her off to go and live with another very powerful vampire in order to be his human Capri Sun slash sex doll. She gets sent to live with him, and while she's living with him, she gets to know him as well as two of his other friends very, very well, especially in the bedroom. And that's about as much as I can tell you. Like I said, I DNF'd this book because I just thought it was so ridiculous, and that is a personal preference. It is white shoes or reverse harem. I don't know, is there a difference or are they the same thing? Beats me, but I did not know that going in. I went into it completely blind, and let me tell you, that is the last time I will ever do that. That's a lie. I'm gonna keep doing it, but I think I learned a bit of a lesson. But if that concept does sound interesting to you, you might want to give it a try. Next up, I read Say You Swear by Megan Brandy. This is a love triangle romance about a girl named Ari. And in the beginning, you get to see her and her friend group that have a summer beach house together and their time there, and then you actually follow them along into college where she gets involved in a love triangle with two football players. So there is a little bit of sports romance going on. However, it's not super sports heavy, so definitely don't expect that going into it. I ended up giving this book 3 stars because I really, really enjoyed it in the beginning. I loved the found family, and the romance was absolutely perfect. But then at the 70 to 75% mark, there's a plot twist that happens, and I absolutely hated this plot twist. I don't want to spoil it, but I'm gonna spoil it. So I'll put a timestamp here if you don't want to know. But in here, she is in this love triangle. She figures out who she wants to be with. They are running to each other, you know, telling each other, oh, I love you, let's be together. And then boom, she gets hit by a car. And I know it's not supposed to be funny. A lot of people say that this book is very emotional, but I wanted to laugh because anytime that happens, it reminds me of that scene in Mean Girls, and it also is just something that I feel like I only really see in comedy movies. I don't think that plot twist is very common in actual romances. So yeah, for me, it just completely ruined this book. I'm not gonna lie, but the first 70-ish% was really good. If it would have stopped there, it probably would have been at like a 4 star for me. It was good until it wasn't. And then the next book I actually read on Kindle Unlimited, and that is the Mind F series by St. Abbey. Technically speaking, I think that it is 5 books, but they're all around the 200-page mark, so I read it as one in literally one sitting. But this is about a girl named Lana, I think, and a guy named Logan. She is a serial killer, and he is an FBI profiler that is working on her case. I ate this up because it was so good. Every like book ends on a little bit of a cliffhanger to where you just want to keep reading. I thought it was so much fun, so I did give it 4.5 stars. It was so good and just really hooked me in. I really like that at the same time that Logan is working on Lana's case without knowing it, he is also working on other cases, so you get to see those cases as well. It makes it a little bit more interesting. I also do like Lana as a main character because you kind of get to see her plotting her kills, and you do learn why she kills, and I'm just gonna say, valid. But I will say that there are some very graphic scenes that go on in this book, so definitely check your trigger warnings if you're wanting to read it as well. And then I read It's Not Summer Without You. Yeah, that's correct. It's Not Summer Without You by Jenny Han. This is the second book in the Summer I Turned Pretty series. The new season came out, so of course I wanted to read it. I'm sure everyone knows what this story is about, but if you're not, this whole series is about a girl who goes to a family beach house with her mom's best friend and her kids. They all grow up together going like every single summer, and eventually she finds herself in a love triangle with the 2 brothers. I can't really say much without spoiling what ends up happening, but I will just say that I gave this book 2 stars. Don't get mad at me, okay? I just thought this book was so boring. I don't really care for either of the brothers, to be honest, and Belly is not like a super annoying main character, but I also just don't really care for her. I did like the first book a lot better than I liked this one, and when it comes to the show, I really do like it as well, but if I'm gonna be honest, I like it because I want to see where it's going to go with Taylor and Steven. That's just how I feel. So if you are on the fence about reading the book or watching the show, I would honestly say you could probably just skip the books and watch the show. The next 4 books I read are also part of a series, and that is the Chestnut Springs series by LZ Silver. These are all fun little cowboy romances with a great found family in them. I believe it takes place in Canada as well, on like a ranch slash farm. Are they the same thing? I don't know. So yeah, that's what these are about, and all of the stories have a dad in there named Harvey, who reminds me so much of the character that Sam Elliott plays in The Ranch. So if you like the dad, you will like these, because he honestly makes these books so much more fun. But anyways, let's get into them one by one. The first one is Flawless. This is about Summer and Rhett. Rhett is a bull rider and Summer is a PR agent who, when Rhett has a little bit of a scandal, she goes to stay with him and also follows him around when he bull rides in order to kind of help repair his reputation after this scandal, and they end up falling in love. I thought the romance was really cute and really fun, and I also think it's just a great introductory book into a series. But for me, I never really liked the first book as much as the rest normally, because I feel like the more you read the books, the more you learn about all of the characters and the more you learn to love them and get excited for their stories. So that's why I didn't love this one as much as some of the others. But I still ended up giving it 3.5 stars. Another fun aspect that's in all of these books is that they do have little text messages between the characters at the beginning of pretty much every chapter, which also just shows a little bit more of their personalities, and is super fun because the text messages are almost like text messages between you and your best friend that you would not want anyone else to read. The second one in the series is Heartless. This is about Willa and Cade. Cade is Rhett's brother from the first one. Willa is Summer's best friend. Cade is also a grumpy single dad, and Willa ends up being his live-in nanny. I loved this book, mostly because of Willa, if I'm being honest. She is such a fiery, fierce main character, and I absolutely loved her. Cade, on the other hand, a little boring, but that's okay. I still really enjoyed this story a lot more than the first one, so I did give it 4 stars. This one has just so much more humor in it. However, the reason it only got 4 stars is because the very end wasn't necessarily something that I wanted for this couple, but it is what it is. And also, the kitten here is not annoying, which is so important to me. So if that's important to you, you might definitely like this book. Might and definitely are not synonyms, but you get what I'm saying. The third book in the series is Powerless. This is Jasper and Sloane's story. Jasper is basically the other boys' adopted brother, and Sloane is their real cousin. Jasper is a hockey player, so you get a little bit of like city vibes plus the country vibes as well. And they are also childhood friends to lovers, so you get to see their story. They've always had a thing for each other, but never acted on it until now. I gave this 3 stars because I did not really like it as much as the other books in the series. I thought it was a little bit boring, a little bit slow, and I also just thought that they weren't as funny and like the banter wasn't as good as the couples in the other books, so that's why it's not really my favorite, but it is a favorite for a lot of other people, so you're just gonna have to read the entire series to figure it out for yourself. And then the 4th book in the series is Reckless. This is Theo and Winter's story. Theo is Rhett from the first book's protege. Rhett's his coach. Is that what a prodigy is? Prodigy. He's a bull rider. And Winter is Summer's sister from the first book as well. You're not really meant to like Winter. She is seen as a grumpy character from the other books. But in this book, she has a one-night stand with Theo and she ends up getting pregnant. So you have the accidental pregnancy in there. And other people say that it is a secret baby trope, which I didn't really know that that was a thing. But here we are, so I guess it is. But basically, he doesn't know that she had a baby. And then he ends up reuniting with her, figuring it out. You're seeing them fall in love genuinely, not just because they have a child together, which I really loved. And at first, I thought the second book was my favorite. But now thinking back on it, I think this one is my favorite. So I did give this one 4.5 stars because I just love Theo. When I have a baby, my husband better treat me the way Theo treats Winter in this book, because he's just a different breed, you know? But yeah, I absolutely love this one. Next up, I did a 24-hour readathon where I only read thrillers, and the first book that I read during that was Final Girls by Riley Sager. This is about Quincy, and she is what is considered a final girl because she survived a massacre, basically, where she was in a group setting, Everyone there was murdered and she was the sole survivor. And there are two other girls who survived similar instances, so the media deemed them as the public girls. It is now years later and one of them is found dead, so the other two band together to try to figure out what actually happened to her. And at the same time, Quincy does not remember anything from what happened the night that she survived years ago, so her memory is slowly coming back to her, and you're actually going to figure out who the killer was during her attack. So you have the now and then timeline, and I ended up giving this 3 stars because I felt like at times it went a little bit slow. I will say the plot twist was good, but I didn't necessarily care for our main character. I don't know, I just didn't. So yeah, that's that. I wouldn't say this is one of my favorite Riley Sager books, but a lot of people do say that it's their favorite, so it's just one of those things where we might have different opinions. And then I ended up reading The Kind Worth Killing by Peter Swanson. This is about a girl named Lily, I believe, and I think the guy's name is Ted. Or am I thinking of How I Met Your Mother? Yeah, okay. I never even put that connection together. Anyways, this is about Lily and Ted. They meet at an airport one day, and after their conversation, by the end of it, she offers to help him kill his wife. And that's all I'm going to say about it because there is a huge plot twist early on in this book, and the rest of the story just goes in a completely different direction than you could possibly imagine it going. I had such a good time with this. I ended up giving it 4 stars because I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a great story that literally had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. And Lily is once again one of those characters where even though she's a murderer, I love her. I don't know what that says about me, but you know, it is what it is. And then after that one, I picked up The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I always have trouble pronouncing his last name, but this is the author of The Silent Patient, and I really enjoyed that, but not so much this one. So this one is about a girl named Mariana who her niece goes to Cambridge, and while she's staying there, one of her friends get murdered. So Mariana goes to try to console her, and while she's there, she decides she is going to figure out who murdered this young college student, and she is pretty much set on the fact that it is a professor there named Edward. Edward is the type of professor that everyone absolutely loves. His class is always so full. People literally sit on the ground. He also has a group called the Maidens who are very just sketchy because it is basically a study group, but it's not really a study group. That's just what they say they are, but it's a group of young, beautiful college students. So that's already weird right there. They're just very protective of him. They don't tell anyone what goes on during their study group sessions or anything like that. And so she's just very suspicious of him. I did not like this at all. I gave it 2 stars. If you read The Silent Patient and you thought that was slow, this is a lot slower to me. And I thought that most of the time it was just about our main character and her whole story. You really didn't get to see much about the Maidens, which just confused me because I was a lot more interested in this group and why they're so weird, and you don't even figure that out in this book. So it was just confusing. Like, why did you call it the Maidens? Give us more. But unfortunately, he didn't. On the other hand, though, after that one, I read Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney, and I absolutely loved this one. So this one is about a woman and her husband who they're having some issues with their marriage, but when they win a free trip to go stay at like this chapel turned into an Airbnb in the middle of the woods where it's snowy, they decide to take it as a chance to kind of rekindle their love, I guess. And while they were there, a bunch of weird stuff starts happening. I gave it 4 stars because I thought the plot twist was so good. It just blew my mind. And once you got the plot twist, all of these pieces of clues that you got throughout the story just click, and you're kind of like, wow. How did I not put that together? It's really good. You get the husband and wife's point of view, and it's kind of funny because they're blaming each other for all of this weird stuff that's going on. And then you get a third person's point of view, and that is the person who is actually responsible for everything. And you don't know why they're doing it until you do. And like I said, all the pieces just click, and it's so good. I definitely highly recommend this to absolutely any and everyone. And then I read Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. This is about a woman who her daughter goes missing. Now it is years later and she has a new boyfriend, and he actually has a daughter who looks just like her daughter did when she went missing. But obviously it can't be her daughter because aging is a thing. So you're just following that. You're trying to figure out what happened to her daughter all those years ago, and at the same time, why does this little girl look just like her daughter? I gave it 2 stars because I was able to guess the plot twist early on in this book, but I kept reading because honestly, I didn't want to be right, which is not something I say a lot, but unfortunately, I was right. which is something I say a lot. But anyways, I thought the story was just kind of dark and twisted, and I did not like the plot twist whatsoever. However, that is of no fault to the author because that's probably what she was purposely trying to convey. So if you like kind of dark and twisted plot twist where it makes you feel a little weird, you might like this one. Give it a try. Who knows? But for me, not it. And then the last book that I read during my readathon was on Kindle Unlimited, and that was The Inmate by Frida McFadden. This is about a woman who ends up getting a new job working at a prison as like a nurse, and one of the prisoners happens to be a man that she sent to prison and is serving a life sentence. Throughout this story, you're following her and him interacting. You're also getting a now and then timeline to kind of see why she put him in prison, but at the same time, she starts learning new pieces of information, and she's wondering if he's actually the person that committed the crime that she sent him in there for. It is a lot of back and forth. Frida McFadden thrillers are always just kind of like in the 3-star range for me. They're good, fun, fast-paced thrillers that are really easy to get through, and they hold your attention very well, but they don't have the greatest plot twist, if you know what I mean. Like at the end, you're not like mind blown or anything, but I still really love them when I need something that's a little bit mindless and I know isn't going to be too dark and twisty. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It is kind of just like a mid thriller, but I did really enjoy my time reading it, and the entire time she also had me confused. I didn't know who the heck was guilty of this crime, so it was fun. And those are all of the books that I read in the month of June. Now let's get into July. So the first 5 books that I read in the month of July was another series, and that is the Acotar series by Sarah J. Maas. Once again, a lot of people have already read this, so I'm just gonna speed through it. This book is about Feyre. She ends up going into the woods one night and kills what she believes is a wolf. Turns out it's a fae, and in this world you are not allowed to kill faes, so your punishment is supposed to be death, but another fae creature named Tamlin comes along and tells her, either I kill you or you come and live with me in my castle at the Spring Court. Your choice. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. There's also just so much more that happens, but that's kind of the main thing, and that all happens within the first 100 pages. The rest of the story follows Feyre and Tamlin connecting with one another, and then she ends up having to go through these trials in order to save the Fae lands. I honestly was really nervous about starting the series. I did not think I was gonna love it as much as everyone else. There is something in my eye. Why can't I just live a peaceful life? I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was really fun, super easy to get into. That's that one. And then I went into the second one, which is A Court of Mist and Fury. I can't say anything about this one except that it just follows right after the first book. The found family in it is amazing. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. And then of course I read Acotar, A Court of Wings and Ruin. This is the third book. This one is about a war that's going to take place, so it is a little bit more political, but I loved it just as much as the second one. I gave both of them 5 stars. A lot of people say the second one is their favorite, but I just loved both of them for different reasons. Next up is the novella, technically, A Court of Frost and Starlight. I gave this one 3 stars because I honestly felt like it wasn't super necessary. It is just a novella, so you can't be too harsh about it. I don't really have much else to say about it. And then of course I read the last one so far, which is A Court of Silver Flames. This one is about Nesta's story. Nesta is the sister of Feyre from the first one, and you don't really like her from the other books at all. She's a moody, mean character, but in this one you're getting her point of view as well as Cassian, and Cassian is the fun, flirty kind of character. So we all know and love this trope. This one is also just full of so much action too, especially at the end. There is a Hunger Games like scenario that happens. I enjoyed this one, just not as much as the others, so I gave it 4.5 stars, but it was still really, really good. Next up, I did a video where a TBR jar chooses what I read for a week, and in that video, the first book I read was The Hotel Nantucket by Ellen Hildebrand. This is about a woman named Lisbeth who she recently went through a breakup with her boyfriend, who she also worked with, so she decides to get a new job at the Hotel Nantucket, which is notoriously haunted and has been through multiple owners because no one can keep it open. So she's working there now, and she is also responsible for hiring a whole new group of employees. So you're getting all of these characters' point of view told in third person. You're learning all of their secrets because every single one of them has them, and you are also getting the point of view of the ghost that is haunting the hotel. At the same time that you're learning about all this drama going on between the characters and all of their secrets, you are also trying to figure out who is this blogger that is supposed to come and stay at the hotel and give it a review, and they really want a good review, so they're trying to be on their best game. I just really enjoyed this. I thought it was fun. Definitely one of those reads where you're gonna want to pick it up if you just want something that's very mindless and has all the beach vibes. So yeah, that's this one. I gave it 3.5 stars because I thought it was just really fun and drama filled. However, I will say there are a lot of characters, so it does get confusing at times, but it's not that confusing. And then I picked up the Song of Achilles. This is about Achilles, of course, but it's mostly about his love interest, Patroclus, so it's told in his point of view. Patroclus is basically, what is the word? Exiled by his father when he is young for something that happens, so now he's an orphan. He meets Achilles at this orphanage. You see them both grow up together and fall in love, and then they go to war together, and things just go downhill because Achilles, his mother is a goddess, and he has this destiny where he's supposed to be this great warrior. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I know a lot of people love this book. I loved the writing. I thought it was a beautiful story, but I think it's, I guess, a tragedy at the end of it, and I really just couldn't root for them. I did not like Achilles. I thought he was kind of a douchebag, and most importantly, I thought that it was very obvious that Patroclus loved him more than he loved Patroclus. And then I read Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This is about Macy and Elliot. They grew up as neighbors and they formed a bond over their love of books. So you see them grow up as kids as well. It's childhood friends to lovers, and they do end up dating as well, but then something happens, they break up, and they just stop talking for years. Now it is years later and they are reconnecting with one another. You're getting their story. It's a now and then timeline once again. I did give it 4 stars, but if I'm being honest, it only really got that rating because I absolutely love how pure and genuine their connection is from the time they are kids and then watching them grow up and fall in love. But if I'm being honest, I don't really care for them as adults, but that's just how it goes sometimes. And then I read Neon Gods by Katie Robert. She's the same author as A Court of the Vampire Queen, and of course I DNF'd that one, but this one is a whole different story. I decided to give her a second try. This is another dark romance, and this one's about Persephone and Hades. Persephone's mother tries to marry her off to Zeus, who is terrible and old. I'm not ageist, but you know, like, ew. Anyways, when her mother tries to marry her off to Zeus, she ends up running away, finding herself with Hades, who is Zeus's enemy. They band together. He offers to let her stay there if she agrees to pretend to date him in order to just kind of piss Zeus off, I guess. And yeah, the entire time they're also figuring out how to get rid of Zeus so that she can be safe, because he's going to keep coming after her. And I ended up giving this 4 stars because this is truly just a dark romance. It's fun, it's fast, it's mindless, and very smutty. I just really enjoyed this when I needed a read like that. You might also enjoy it if you're looking for something like that. And this is a whole series that I think has like 5, maybe 6 books, so I am going to continue it. I actually did already. And I read the second one, not back to back, but I'm still just going to talk about them at the same time. So this one is Electric Idol. This one is about, what are their names? Eros and Psyche. Eros is a hitman for his mother Aphrodite, and she hires a hit out on Psyche. But once he ends up meeting her, he decides that he's not going to kill her, and instead he marries her in order to save her life. Yet his mother is still going after her and wants to kill her, so they're navigating that as well. I gave this one 3.5 stars because I didn't like it as much as the first one. In both of these books, I will say the main plots are kind of resolved very quickly towards the end, but I still really like the vibes. And then on my Kindle, I read Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This one is on Kindle Unlimited as well, and this is a fantasy romance about a woman. I don't remember her name, or his name as a matter of fact, but basically, her brother ends up going to fight in this war between a god and a goddess, and she's really missing him. She's really lonely. Her home life isn't going that well, so she decides to start writing him letters in a typewriter, and she puts them in her armoire to save them for later, I guess, when he gets back, because she has no way to actually send them. But then these letters start disappearing, and she believes that they're going to her brother. However, she gets a note back that says this is not your brother. Yet she continues to write this person, and she doesn't know it yet, but the person who's actually writing her is her work rival. It is a really, really cute and sweet, fun little romance. I will say it is a lot heavier on the romance side and not as heavy on the fantasy side, but I still absolutely loved it. I gave it 3.5 stars. I read it in one sitting because it was just so amazing and I was having such a good time. So of course I do highly recommend it. Okay guys, and we are finally getting to the last few books that I read in the month of July. These I all read in my latest video where I switched screen time for reading time for a week, and the first book I read was The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. This is about a girl, Emma, that when she is younger she goes to a summer camp, and one night the 3 girls she is dorming with leave the cabin and they are never seen again. Now it is like 15 years later, she is an adult and she's an artist, and the camp owner comes to her and asks her to come and work at the camp. So she agrees to, and she also decides that while she's there, she's gonna figure out what happened to her 3 bunkmates all those years ago. And I did enjoy this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't my favorite Riley Sager book once again, because I said this in my other video, but it just felt too real for me because it reminds me of the Girl Scout murders if you're into true crime and you've ever heard of that. So it made me feel a little uncomfortable, but it was still good. The plot twist was good, and I think it's really fun for like a summer thriller. So that's that one. And then the second book I read on my Kindle. It is not on Kindle Unlimited, unfortunately. I did buy it, but it is Riley Sager's newest release, which is the only one left. This is about a girl named Kit who is a caregiver, and she ends up getting suspended for her job for 6 months. So when she comes back, she has to take a job that no one else wants to do, which is working for Eleanor Hope. Or Eleonora? No, it's Eleanor, right? Lenora Hope. But basically the reason no one wants to take care of Lenora is because she is known for, in the 20s, murdering her entire family. So now she has to go and live at the home that she murdered her family in, which is like this creepy kind of Victorian mansion on the side of a cliff, and take care of this creepy old woman who has no movement left in her body except she can move her left hand, and she also cannot speak. So she starts communicating with Kit through the use of a typewriter, and she tells her that she's going to tell her the entire story about what happened to her family all those years ago, and tell her if it really even was her who killed them. I loved this one. I gave this one 4 stars. I think it's Riley Sager's best book so far. I love the vibes that you get from these flashbacks of the 20s. I love that our main character also had like a dark secret of her own, and it was just really fun overall. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a new thriller to read. I read a lot of Riley Sager in the past 2 months. But then after that, I read Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is about Magnolia and BJ. They are a very toxic couple. They live in London. I'm sure we've all heard that it's Gossip Girl vibes, but in London, that is 100% accurate. They're super rich, spoiled kids, and at one point they dated, but then they break up because of something, and now that they're not together, they are both still trying to make each other jealous by doing different things to one another, and it's just a super toxic relationship. I wouldn't even necessarily say this is a romance because it is really hard to root for this couple. I did give it 4.5 stars because I loved the drama that went on. I thought the writing was beautiful, but don't go into it expecting it to be a fun little fluffy romance because it's not. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of people describe it as being heavier than it actually is. I don't think it was that deep, but that's just my opinion, so yeah. And then I read Shatter Me by Tahira Mafi, I think is how you say it. This is about Juliet. She has a deadly touch, so if she touches people for too long, they die. That's what a deadly touch is. Because of this power that she has, she is locked away for years. And then the new government that takes over, called the Reestablishment, which is just really bad, find out about her power, and now they take her in because they want to use her as a weapon. And there's a lot that happens in this story, but for me, it was only a 3-star. I just felt like at times it went really slow. The writing was easy to understand though, and a lot did happen, but I feel like it was just very predictable. I also didn't necessarily care for the love triangle that goes on in this, but once again, I just read the first book, so I don't really understand all of that yet. It is a very long series, so I feel like the more I get into it, the more I may enjoy it. But as for the first one, not off to a great start. And then another book that I bought on my Kindle was One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, except for their witches and the mafia. So you are following the 2 rival witch families, the Fedorovs and the Antonovas. 2 of the daughters and 2 of the sons end up falling in love with one another. It does end in tragedy, but it also kind of has a happy ending at the same time. I really enjoyed like the plot and where the story went and the politics of it all. The only thing that really ruined my reading experience is the fact that there are just too many characters to keep up with. It's told in third point of view, and you get like so many people's point of views, people that I don't care to see their point of view, because it's not just both families, but it's also like all of the people that they're dealing with, which was just so confusing because there's too many people, and I just It was too much for my brain to comprehend. But besides that, like I said, I love the plot, so I did give it 3.5 stars, and the writing itself was not very hard to understand. It was just the names. I just can't get over that. I don't know why, but you may be able to. Maybe that was just a me problem. Next up, I read The Grace Year by Kim Leggett. This is about Tierney, and she lives in a society where when girls turn 16, they go on what is called their grace year, and you learn that during this grace year, they're basically sent out into the woods in like this gated community where it is up to them to survive on their own. A lot of people compare it to Lord of the Flies meets The Handmaid's Tale. I don't know anything about either of those, so I can't tell you if that's accurate or not. I gave this 5 stars because the entire time I was just so entertained. The whole world was just crazy. Their society blew my mind, and the mass hysteria that went through this was just also insane. Just think about a group of girls going alone on their own, and the only thing they've ever known their whole life is men controlling what they do every second of every day. So now that they're on their own, things get a little crazy. And at the same time, they have to deal with poachers, who are these people that wait outside the gates and try to murder the girls anytime they leave the gates. So you have all of that they're dealing with, and it's just insane. Blew my mind. Absolutely loved it. I would recommend this to you guys, but be careful because the way that they treat women and talk about women in this book, it might be very uncomfortable for people, but I do really recommend this. And then the last book that I read this month was actually Echoes and Empires by Morgan Rhodes. This is about Jocelyn. Jocelyn grew up believing that all magic is bad, so when a thief named Jericho releases this magic that he's trying to steal and it goes into Jocelyn, so now she has powers, she's freaking out. She wants to get rid of it before the queen finds out, and he helps her. They go on a little trip and find themselves in prison. So now they're just navigating that. At the same time, they're learning that things are not as they seem. The queen and all of the people around her are not as good as they seem. And I thought it was just a fun little fantasy romance. It's definitely YA, I think, but I still had a lot of fun reading it. I gave it 3.5 stars. If you're looking for a fantasy that is quick and easy and not difficult to understand at all, definitely give this a try. This is my first time ever hearing about this author. But yeah, I just thought it was a fun, cute little fantasy. So those are all of the books that I read in the month of June and July. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know what you think. Also, let me know if you read any of these books, what your opinions were. If you have any recommendations, what's on your TBR for August. I know this video is very late. We're like halfway through August already, but it's okay, you know? Also, if you guys want to keep up with what I'm currently reading, go ahead and go over to my Instagram. I also started a Goodreads, but I haven't posted on either of those yet because I don't know what to do. So I do need your opinions. Should I either start off where I'm at now, or should I backtrack and post a little bit about books that I read in the past? Because I don't know. I'm stuck and I don't know where to start, so just let me know what you guys think. But yeah, that is all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope each and every one of you have a great rest of your day. Bye!